Jose Montoya happened to be the guy, one of the guys that got me into poetry. If you want to blame anybody, blame him. And if you don't know who Jose Montoya is, he's what we call the father of Chicano poetry. Yeah. And he's still around and he's still doing it. He's still kicking butt. So I want to read this poem to him, and it's also dedicated to David Henderson, who, if you don't recall, was one of the leading African-American performance poets, and Pedro Pietri, who also just passed away, a Puerto Rican genius. You couldn't find a more amazing poet performer than Pedro. So my first poetry reading of all time had those three guys. If you can imagine that, like getting OD'd for the first time you shoot up heroin or something, like you get hit hard, you know, so. And the only reason I bring up heroin because I was actually a heroin addict at the time. And I actually came to this poetry reading to Berkeley, which I'd never been to before, and came to this first poetry reading, and it changed my life. And I would say, even though it took me a little bit while after that, I did quit heroin. I think a lot of it was this, hearing poetry and getting into it. It's called Fevered Shapes. I wallowed in a needle-spawned world, addicted to dope and the crazy life. And yet there I was in Berkeley for my first poetry reading. I was 18 with a bullet, as they say. Earlier, I had flown on a plane for the first time. Sure, I've survived half a dozen gun assaults, cops knocking me around, ODs, blades to my neck in jail cells, homeless and dank streets and beatdowns and barrio brawls. But flying, that scared me to death. I sat there in a crowded cafe, not knowing what to expect. Poetry? I never heard this before. Oh, I had written lines. Vignettes, images, fears, thoughts. I didn't know they were poems. I had no idea what a poem was. First up on the mic was Jose Montoya, with Chicano prayers of old pachucos and strained loves and guitar solos and Indian hands in cornflower. Then David Henderson took the stage, gleaning urban black streets, racist stares, Black Panther fury, and Southern cooking. Finally, Pedro Pietri came up, Neo-Rican wordmeister, flashing at Radio's experiences with poems located in phone booths and real-life wisdoms that made us laugh and shake our heads. I had never heard words spoken this way. More music than talk, more fevered shapes than sentences, more Che and Malcolm than Shakespeare. These poems came for me, lassoed my throat, demanded my life savings, taking me for a sunset ride, knocking me to the dust. These poems were graffiti scrawls along the alleys and trash-strewn tunnels of my body, the metaphoric methadone for the heroin hurling through my bloodstream, the lifeline I already had inside and didn't know. These poems were pool sticks, darkened gangways, a swirl of sunrise after the graveyard shift, a blood-black yelling behind torn curtains, a child screaming, and nobody coming to help. They were a woman's scent after a night of lovemaking, a sweet touch of hand to face, cascades of hair on a pillow, a moan during an elongated kiss. These poems were shadowed intent, startled doubts, sorrows without grief, the moon without sky, unknown melodies, the falling inside that happens when you push razor onto wrist. They came for me as I sank into my suicide, while fidgeting in a chair, inching under the skin as I wondered why I even came. Jose, David, and Pedro, I was never the same after this. They came for me, and I've never let go. They came for me, and I've perspired poems ever since. They came for me and all my addictions, my sorry-ass lies, my falling masks, my pissed-off wives, neglected children, angry friends, and back-to-back failures could never, ever take them away. Thank you. The acrobats were out in Washington Square Park, flaying arms and colors, the jokers and breakdancers, the singers and mimes. I pulled out of a reading at New York City College and watched a crowd gathering around a young man jumping over 10 garbage cans from a skateboard. Then out of the side of my eye, I saw someone who didn't seem to belong here, like I didn't belong. He was a big man, 6 feet and more, with tattoos on his arms, back, stomach, and neck. On his abdomen were the words in huge Old English lettering, Hazard. I knew this guy. I knew that place. I looked closer. It had to be him. And it was. Animal from East LA, world heavyweight contender, the only Chicano from LA ever ranked in the top 10 of the division, the one who went toe-to-toe with Leon Spinks and even made Muhammad Ali look the other way. Animal, I yelled. Who the heck are you, he asked. He caught a beard in his grasp, eyes squinting. My name's Louis from East LA. He brightened. East LA? Here in Washington Square Park? Man, we everywhere. Then the proverbial what part of East LA came next, but I gave him a shock. From La Garrity, I said. That's the mortal enemy of the Big Hazard gang. I should kill you, Animal replied. Hey, if we were in LA, I suppose you would, but we in New York City, man. I should kill you anyway. Instead, he thrust out his hand with the beer and offered me a drink. We talked about what had happened since he stopped boxing, about the time I saw him at the Cleveland House Arena looking over some up-and-coming fighters, how he had been to prison and later ended up homeless in New York City with a couple of kids somewhere. And there he was with a mortal enemy from East LA talking away. I told him how I was now a poet, doing a reading at City College, and he didn't wince or look surprised. Seemed natural. Sure, a poet from East LA. That's the way it should be. Poet and boxer, drinking beer among the homeless, the tourists, and acrobats, mortal enemies. When I told him I had to leave, he said, go then, but soon shook my hand, East LA style, and walked off. Maybe someday you'll do a poem about me, eh? Sure, Animal, that sounds great. Someday I'll do a poem about you. So this is my poem to Machu Picchu, and it's titled, Machu Picchu, or What I Should Have Become When the Ancient Stone Walls and the Clouded Heights Named My Blood. Memories of childhood rise up like a twisted vine, mocking the granite sinews of this adult body and the solid layers of lies that has become my face. Demanding a lightness of foot and of fears as antidotes to the round-bellied nightcrawler I've succumbed to. This clown in tattooed skin, a priest without prayers, the wrinkled figure in soggy coat on a scorched plain. While fire awakens me, although I'm cold inside, surrounded by carcasses of embattled loves and blistered stories, always ending with betrayals and dismissals, with the turning away of the most emblazoned eye. They are the settled, unholy ingredients in the bottled angst I've traded on street corners, poetry bars, living room arguments, and in between the multi-track songs that singe the cluttered paths of my lunacies. I can't hide, I can't run. The ruins speak to me in whispered cadences with scrolled breath, blurting out curd of threats, words that bob in a rushing mud river, ripping the flesh of cruel invectives, addressing me like a worried mother, a tired frog outside my window while laying me down on the ground, crawling with spiders and my best intentions. I learned to live on chicken and vegetable soup, long walks, coca leaves inside my cheeks, chicha morada, the way the natives did for thousands of years with few calories, yet still energized, awake, strong. And even the wooded hills and high altitudes are less formidable, less monstrous, more like brothers, like leaves, like a welcoming breeze. Machu Picchu, you were always in my crowded dreams, in the faded colors of my worn clothes, on the folds near my eyes, always a tree branch to cling to, a father when my own father ate the hearts of his children, as a brother in the heroin nights of my downtowns, even when I had never seen you. I'm here, and I sense this open citadel helps shape my hands, my mouth, the many constants of my inconsistencies, and whatever death melody I played but never died to. A place, an embrace, a cauldron of history I never knew I had. Machu Picchu survived the thousands for my steps to seal this pact, to communicate what winds and tortured rain cannot do, as a meditation in stone, moss, and cloud, with 2-inch hummingbird and satin flower to accompany me, climbing the heights of this carved womb on a grinning mountain to the depths of our own negations and hypocrisies, to whatever song suggests my slow and languid tearing out of my skin. Thank you very much for poetry. Thank you.